WrestleMania 22 always kind of has that funny feeling to me as a show. It's a show that maybe I should view with higher regard. It's maybe a show that should think is better, and I just don't. I don't know why that is. I have my thoughts and ideas, perhaps, but there's just always been something that's off about this show. There's always been something that's been missing with this show for me. Now, quick little funny story for you is this was actually WrestleMania. I was still living in Illinois at the time, and I actually had a chance to go to this show, and for some reason I just didn't. I think this was at one of these times where I just wasn't as interested in the WWE product as I had been in years past. Didn't mean I still wasn't watching. I was still watching every week. I was still keeping tabs. But this was not one of those great banner eras of WWE for me, and as a result, I think that's part of the reason why I ultimately chose and decided to skip out on WrestleMania. I regret that decision to this day ultimately because this would have been a chance, for me to experience WrestleMania weekend live and in person and be able to actually say that, hey, it's a nice feather in the cap. I've actually been to a WrestleMania, something that here in 2014 I've still never been able to do. So sometimes you make decisions in life and you live to love them, and other times you live to regret them. And that's kind of what it is with me on this one. Also, what's funny too is at this time I was working out in Schaumburg at the Woodfield Mall, and I can remember all the different wrestlers coming in during this weekend. I remember seeing Edge at another store trying on wrestling boots, sitting there trying to pull them up and hop around in them, and that was kind of funny to me. But anyways, so WrestleMania 22. Maybe it's because of the fact I didn't go to this show. Maybe it's because of the fact that I worked in the mall during this WrestleMania weekend and I saw how a few of the wrestlers acted, both good and not so good, that kind of turned me off to the show. I don't really know. But there were some other things I think that were missing in the show. Not to say that there weren't good elements and good components of this WrestleMania that would still make this an enjoyable WrestleMania for you to go back and watch, because that's not the case at all. And they definitely had some of that. So when we look at this card, Big Show and Kane successfully defend their tag titles against Carlito and Chris Masters. Remember when those two guys were getting a big push in the WWE? Ooh. 8 years later, how times have changed. RVD wins a really good Money in the Bank ladder match. I don't know if it was quite as good as 2005, but it wasn't that far off. And to me, it was the right guy at the right time to win this here. RVD, for me, is a guy that I used to be a big fan of in the late 90s, early 2000s, and as time has went along, I grew kind of tired and weary of his act. But still here by 2006, I cared about him enough. I wanted him to have this big-time moment at a WrestleMania, and I thought he had earned it. I thought he deserved it, and he got it. So I've always been pleased with this. Like I said, this is a guy that back in 2002, 2003, I thought deserved a lot more than what he ultimately got, which was being served up on a platter to God during his reign of terror. JBL versus Chris Benoit in the United States Championship match. Hey, again, solid match, not spectacular, but a solid match. Didn't hurt the show at all by any stretch of the imagination. Some may feel that the next match was probably the match of the night, and I think when you look back on it in terms of the actual match itself and what it represented and what it signified for a character, you could probably say that. And that was Edge defeating Mick Foley in this hardcore match. And this was kind of really, I guess you'd say, Mick Foley's last hurrah on a WrestleMania card as an in-ring performer. And what Edge really needed, he had that Money in the Bank win at WrestleMania 21. He had cashed in Money in the Bank already. He had become WWE champion on all of this. But what he really, truly needed, with WrestleMania 21, you kind of got that signature individual moment. But now here at WrestleMania 22, he really needed to follow that up with a signature individual victory over a big-time legend. And that's exactly what this match did for him. The memorable spot of sending Spear and Foley through that flaming table. This really, I think, helped elevate Edge's profile and really helped his ascension and his staying at the top of the WWE for the next 5 years to come. This was an important match and a really fun match and a really good match to go back and watch. Unlike the Boogeyman versus Booker T and Sharmell in a handicap match. Think about this. 3 years before, Booker T was fighting Triple H for the World Heavyweight Championship, and he couldn't win there. But now he has to sit there and job to the Boogeyman. Oh boy. Yep. They did that. The company did that. Indeed, indeed. Now, this is one of these WrestleManias where you hear the WWE kind of pump out their propaganda at times, talking about the Chicago area crowd being a bizarro world, and this is great. They could boo, they could cheer for whoever they want, da da da. But the bottom line is you definitely saw that kind of bizarro world mentality with the next match. Mickie James challenging Trish Stratus for the women's championship. And my God, this is a feud that I know a lot of guys like to go back and watch and experience again and fap to again because, you know, it had lesbian undertones. You had two hot, sexy women and two women that could actually really go in the ring. So for a lot of people, this is the type of divas or women's feud that you really want to see. And this is a type of match at a WrestleMania that you really want to see. One of the best women's matches at a WrestleMania, bar none, is Mickie versus Trish here at WrestleMania 22. A real spotlight match, a real highlight match on this card, perfectly positioned right in the middle of the show. Kind of a passing of the torch from Trish Stratus to Mickie James. I just wish they would have celebrated more with more grasping and groping and hugging and kissing after the match result. But anyways, you know, it's not a surprise that the testosterone-laden Chicago crowd was all behind Mickie James with the lesbian undertones and the fact that she was the new face on the block. This match really worked well for me. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Then you get The Undertaker versus Mark Henry in the casket match. And this was one of these matches that I never felt that Mark Henry was going to end the streak, but I thought this was a good spot, a good moment, a good place and time for a Mark Henry to get a big-time featured WrestleMania match, especially as you're trying to make him this big-time serious heel. I don't think they went nearly as far as they should have with him, but this was a good spot for him to be in with an Undertaker. An okay match, and I emphasize just okay, just passable. But it represented that Mark Henry was a big enough deal to actually wrestle an Undertaker into WrestleMania, and I think that's something that is very noteworthy. Then you had Shawn Michaels versus Mr. McMahon in their kind of street fight here at WrestleMania 22. And, you know, this was kind of a fun match, needless to say. It was a really fun match, actually. This is one of these examples, street fight, no holds barred, whatever you want to call it. This is an example of Shawn trying to do the best he can to go out there and steal the show, being who he was. I still think Edge and Foley did a better job of that, but this match definitely stands on its own and is definitely would be an asset again to any WrestleMania card. And you know, I could just imagine when Shawn gets up on top of that ladder and Vince is sitting there on the table with the garbage can over him. Can you imagine what Vince McMahon is thinking in his head as he knows that Shawn's about to come down on him with that elbow? Can you just imagine? But that's to the credit again of a Vince McMahon, a guy that clearly doesn't have to go out and do this, but he does. A guy that could be so far above this, it doesn't make any sense. But instead, he goes out there and he does business and he makes Shawn Michaels look good. Shawn Michaels obviously makes Vince McMahon look good. And, you know, this is always the joy of a Mr. McMahon match. I mean, to me, if I'm going to have a street fight with anybody, you could sit there and say, well, I want to have a Mick Foley or I want to have a Terry Funk or whoever the case might be, and that's fine. But to me, the guy that can pull off the street fight or no holds barred match as good, if not better than anybody, because in part it masks his physical limitations and it instead emphasizes things like facials and psychology and setup, I think Vince McMahon is perfect for. And it showed here. This was a really fun match, a really good match to go back and watch. And then we get to a match that on the surface had a lot going into it. But even as you were going into it, you just felt like something was off and something was askew. You have Rey Mysterio go a long way and win the 2006 Royal Rumble. And he's going to get his title shot at WrestleMania 22. Now, a lot of people are sitting there and saying, well, he's just getting pushed because of Eddie, and maybe they should have done it with Chavo. Hey, it is what it is. But the bottom line is Ray was an incredibly talented performer, and he was a guy at the time that was a big-time draw for the company, and he was a guy that moved a lot of merchandise. So it made sense here that even if he was just getting the push because Eddie had passed away, he was the right guy. And this was the right time to do it, and the right moment to do it. And there were a lot of things that felt good going into it. But it seemed like the WWE did everything they could to sabotage this as soon as the Royal Rumble was over. I mean, he's feuding with Randy Orton, and then at No Way Out, he loses his freaking title shot at WrestleMania to Randy Orton. So for some reason, you're fucking throwing Randy Orton into the mix here. And now Randy Orton's going to face Kurt Angle. Nobody really wants to fucking see that. And then like a week later on SmackDown, Teddy Long's announcing that Ray's going to get his title shot and it's going to be a triple threat at WrestleMania 22. And it just threw off the whole fucking chemistry of this. You know, the intro when Ray comes in, it's like this should have been a big deal. And the crowd was kind of like, eh. And then the match happens and it's kind of like, eh. And then even the finish happens. And Rey Mysterio triumphs. And Rey Mysterio becomes the new World Heavyweight Champion. And it was what should have been a defining moment for this WrestleMania, what should have been a defining moment in Rey Mysterio's career, what should have been a great, incredible, awesome kind of mark out moment for all of us as fans, just kind of became. It was like the WWE had this set up on a silver platter, and they did everything they could in a way to kind of undermine it and sabotage it, and I never really could understand it. And even the finish and even the victory celebration afterwards, it's like, hey, Ray's the World Heavyweight Champion. He did this for Eddie. This is awesome. Let's go into the Playboy pillow fight with Tori Wilson and Candice Michelle. Exactly. So yeah, you have one world title match where the finish seems like it's kind of rushed. The match goes like I think it was less than 10 minutes, so the match didn't even last that long. The whole chemistry was off. The whole feeling of it was off. It was just off. It was just off. So to me, the WWE was 0 for 1 when it came to the world title matches on this card. And then we get to the main event, and that's John Cena versus Triple H in a WWE Championship match. Now, I knew going into this that there's no way that God's going to beat Cena here. There's just no way. It's just a matter of how much they do, how good this match is, and how far Triple H will go to put over John Cena the right way. And to be fair, obviously, again, this was Bizarro World, and you could really see where the crowd was resenting a John Cena even here in 2006, and they were really getting behind a Triple H. But these guys went out there and had a really good main event quality WrestleMania match. Not one of the all-time great WrestleMania matches or anything, but definitely a main event quality, main event worthy type of match. And Triple H did everything he could ultimately to put John Cena over the right way, the best way he could. I mean, for God's sakes, Triple H lost to him by submission when the crowd was really behind Triple H. And you could have really made an excuse or an argument here, I guess, for a Triple H to actually beat John Cena here. Didn't happen. And of course, the crowd was so excited about it. It was a foreteller of things to come. But me, even by this point, I'm starting to move away from John Cena. I was a very big Cena fan in 2003, 2004. By the time you get into 2005 and 2006, I'm starting to realize what's up, and I'm starting to realize where they're going with him, and I'm not particularly enjoying it, and I'm not particularly liking it. So, at the end of the day, I guess when I think about this, I think about the missed opportunity for me to actually go experience a WrestleMania live and in person. I think about this, and I see that both world title matches in their own ways were a miss to me. Rey Mysterio winning, but it didn't feel like a huge deal. John Cena winning, and it's like, oh, I'm starting to see what's really going on here. You had some great matches here, like Edge and Mick Foley, Shawn Michaels and Mr. McMahon. You had the Money in the Bank match, so there was some good match quality on this card. But to me, this is not an all-time great WrestleMania. I don't even know if it's necessarily in the top 10 or not. Like I said, it's just kind of a middle-in-the-pack WrestleMania to me because at the end of the day, if your two world title matches both feel like they're missing something to me and both leave me feeling kind of disappointed, it's really hard to overcome that with no matter what else, is on the rest of the show, frankly.